Welcome to Board Game Binge, the place where we bring you bite-sized, bingeable board game content from across the industry. I'm your host, James Staley, and in this episode, we're chatting with Nika, one half of the team behind Snowboard Games. Her first title, Hike, a card drafting dog sledding game, is already funded on Kickstarter, and it's in its final 48 hours. Nika, welcome to the binge. How you doing?
Thank you. I am a bit nervous, but otherwise great.
Oh, that's okay. And just for the listeners, I mean, English is not your native tongue, and that's totally cool. We're going to go slow in case there's any words, and I'll help you out with any words if there's anything that we need to help explain things. So first of all, the elephant in the room. You are a physicist with a primary interest in numerical simulations, fluid dynamics, and you have extensive experience in virtual reality flight simulators. Wow. That is crazy. Yeah. So explain this to me. So like how long have you been in physics and how did that get started?
Well, physics, I studied physics. I'm 29, so I've completed my master's in physics a few years ago. And then right after the studies, I started working for an aerospace firm. And we were developing virtual reality flight simulators for ultralight actually aircraft. And our simulators were across the world and people are actually using them for training. So it's pretty awesome.
That is super awesome. Wow. And so was it everything from like just the physics of how it would fly, or did you get into any of the programming at all, or how did that work?
Yeah, a bit of everything. We used a platform called Explain, which is an amazing program for flight simulations. And they have a lot of the physics there already. And it's great because they let you use parts of their physics and then switch parts with whichever parts you like with your own. So we did our own model, both 3D model and a bit of physics. And the VR was already native to that environment. So we could just use it straight.
Wow. Now, have you had any experience actually flying like in reality, or like is this all just theoretical?
Well, I did almost start taking the flying lessons. I think I took 2, and then I decided that I have too many hobbies because I also really like climbing and alpinism, and this is a hobby that takes a lot of time and also commitment. Oh, yeah. And so is flying. So I decided that I needed to choose just one of them, and climbing won. So oh, wow. I'm not flying anymore, but yeah, I've sat inside the ultralight airplane.
And then how did this bridge into board gaming as a whole? Now, your partner, Balaj, is also your fiance, right? That helped you with this game. Like, how long have you guys been gaming for? Like, is this something that started like when you were in school or even before that?
Yeah, when I was a kid, we had a lot of more classic board games, probably you would call it. And we had Settlers of Catan, which we really enjoyed with my sister and my cousin.
Yeah.
So that was our entry game. And then when we were studying, a friend introduced us to the modern board games. And I have to admit, I didn't expect to find such a broad and versatile world, because it really, when he started putting the games out and putting them on the table, I was my head exploded. And we've been hooked ever since. So
now, did you play a lot as a couple, or is this something that you independently kind of played and kind of came together with, or?
Yeah, we play as a couple, and then we have some friends. We actually had a pretty great group before the pandemic.
Yeah.
And then with COVID, everything slowed down a bit, but I'm hoping we could pick it up maybe in the next months.
And is your goal to get into board games more full-time and move away from being a physicist, or do you see the two going hand in hand, or how does that relationship work?
Yeah, I see them hand in hand. Actually, when we started developing this game, a lot of the factors came in together. One of them was that we got an idea for the game and we really enjoy board games. So we said, okay, let's make a prototype and let's try it. And then another one was that Kickstarter just came to Slovenia, and we were fans of the platform, and we were following it as backers before. So this was also something that we wanted to explore. And maybe the third one was that during the pandemic, I realized that jobs are actually a very fragile concept. Yeah. And I was in touch with the startup ecosystem through my work. And I was on a lecture by a great lecturer, George Deriso, who said that people who excel in school often don't do anything special in real life. And this really hurt because I was quite good at school. And then I started thinking about it, and he was right, because I was in this safe job, and so were most of my colleagues, and we weren't doing anything special. We were following this path that's pretty safe, but it's not really a dream of our own. We're pursuing someone else's dream and exchanging our time for a paycheck, basically. So I was also starting to think about how maybe I could find some other channels to express myself, and I saw that physics just wasn't enough. You need other skills, soft skills and marketing skills, and this was a great project because it has very low technological risk. It's a board game. Once you have it, develop it, you just need to print it, so it's not an app that you have to upgrade. And so we took this as an opportunity to learn about everything: business, Kickstarter, board game development, and it's been quite a learning experience.
Oh, that's great. I mean, I talk to so many people, and the number of people that get into the industry because, they've got a great board game idea, or they just want to be a board game designer. And then what they get hit with is the reality of is the business side, right? Like if you're launching a board game, you're getting into business, right? Unless you're just handing it off to someone else, you got to learn the business side, right? And not everybody likes that. So, from your perspective, when you came in this saying, look, we want to learn the business side of this, and, board games through Kickstarter is one way to do that. That's a pretty cool approach, because I would imagine it's probably building up the toolkit that you would need to be successful as you continue to move forward.
Yeah, I hope so. And also, board games are a hobby that we see ourselves in for the long term, because it's a pretty cool hobby. You can do it while you're single, when you have kids, when you're old. Yeah. You can do it always, and it's a great way to spend time with friends. So this is something that we want to be part of for the long run. And I don't want to abandon physics. Actually, I miss it already. So I do plan to return to physics, but this is a project. Hopefully we're creating a platform that will allow us to have something more.
So the obvious question would be, given that you're a physicist in, I don't want to get this wrong, like fluid dynamics and, in airplane simulators and so forth, why not a game to do with airplanes and flight?
Yeah. Well, I may spoil something there, but this is actually not the first idea that we had.
Okay.
And the idea that we were previously working on actually is connected a bit to airplanes, but not the traditional ones, the more older ones and human-powered ones. But that game is pretty complex. It's a Euro, probably. So it's not quite developed yet. And this hike idea seemed pretty simple and straightforward. And I had the idea, and Blaž said, well, let's just make a prototype. And the prototype was done in 4 hours. So,
wow.
But it was a very basic prototype, handmade with arrows and points and everything. But so we kind of decided to go with hike first, because it was much easier. And we can also learn about game development on a game that's maybe not a heavy Euro,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I totally get that. I mean, the first game I ever made over 25 years ago, I still haven't launched that game. So we have 7 titles now that we've put together, and that one is still not in that list. And it's for that exact same reason, right? It's like, this game has got a different, it's not quite right yet. The mark is not right. There's something we got to kind of figure out on, not just understanding kind of how the industry works better before we do that one, because that one's a much more expensive game to do. So it's higher risk. but I'm not sure it's the right game to even launch on this platform, right? And so sometimes if you have multiple ideas, the one that is the simpler idea, the one that you know you can probably execute with least amount of risk, is probably the best path to take, because you're going to learn a lot from that. That then you can apply those learnings to when you do a more risky launch, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Now with Hike, let's talk about Hike. So this game is about sledding. Go ahead, yeah.
Can I ask you something?
Sure.
Do you plan to launch that first game that you designed?
That's a good question. It is on my wish list. It's one of those things that my challenge is, and my design partner, who's also my brother, Adam, every time we start working on a game, we end up having 2 or 3 offshoot games that we end up thinking of while we're working on that game. And the short answer is eventually that game will be done, but we keep following our passion, right? And I think it's important to follow your passion, because your passion is what gets you excited and really keeps the engine going, right? It's the thing that gets you up in the morning, and the thing that allows you to stay up till 3 o'clock in the next day working on your game is the passion. And we've been blessed with continually having different ideas that we're very, very passionate about. And so though we're going to let the engine run on those, so to speak, for a little while. But that one it's definitely, before I retire, that game will eventually be launched. So
awesome.
So dog sledding, let's talk about dog sledding. So how did you get this idea of doing a dog sledding game? Where did that come from?
Well, first I have to say I have no practical experience with it whatsoever, because it's not really very popular here in Slovenia,
Sure.
or at least I don't know about it. But we watched a Disney movie called Togo. So you probably know about it.
Yep.
And it has a really great story about this special bond between man and the dog, and how they fight against the pretty brutal forces of nature, because there's one monster storm in their path. And as alpine climbers, we've seen a bit of a rough weather conditions, and we can really appreciate what they did. I mean, we don't have any experience that would compare to what they did, but and it's based on actual live real events. And so we Googled that. And then I Googled dog sledding and equipment and the distances and everything, and then forgot about it. But I think it stayed with me subconsciously, because about a month or 2 after, I got the idea for this dog sledding game that would have dogs with different edges, and that you would have to match patterns. So this was kind of the core idea, and then we went from there.
It's super cool, and I'm sure for people who are watching, and if you're listening to the podcast, come check out the our YouTube version of this interview. You can see some of the visuals, or just go to Kickstarter and check it out yourself. I mean, you guys, I'm gonna put this in Canadian dollars because that's the way I can see it on this end. But man, you guys had a goal of I think it was like $6,000 or something like that. It's about $8,700. You're at $152,000. So absolutely smashed your Kickstarter goal. So congrats on that.
Thank you.
And what really got me excited about this, number one, was just a subject matter I thought was pretty interesting, because it's so novel. I haven't seen a game like this before, and this idea of kind of training the dogs and getting the dogs kind of ready, and then going over terrain, and the terrain is basically cards that you're flipping over each round as you're kind of traversing this terrain, and then having different equipment and things like that you can use. I just thought it was really cool as a game concept. Can you talk a little bit about how you play? Maybe give us a general idea of how you play this game.
I actually have a copy here, because
Sweet.
When these last days, I always keep a copy at hand, because
you never know.
For Kickstarter, you never know. You have these Husky Cards, and we really have an amazing artist. I have to say this, Paulina Vach. She's worked on board game projects before, and we were so lucky when she said yes. You have these different Husky Cards, and you need to put them in a sled, so 2 rows of 4. And the edges need to match, so you can put them like this or like this, but you can't put them like this.
Okay, I see, yeah.
Yeah, and then you have movement points. This has 2 blue movement points, and this one has 1 gray, for example. And then you have landscape cards, for example, oops, this one that also has movement points, and you have to match the movement points of the Huskies with the movement points on the terrain. So it's first you're drafting your sled and matching the edges, and then in the second phase you're racing and you're trying to get to the finish as soon as possible. So
now, is there any mitigating factors, like after the race begins, is there anything you can do to improve your chances of winning that race, or is the cards is it basically set once the dogs are kind of teamed up?
So yeah, it's really important that what kind of a team you start the race with. But then you have equipment cards and care cards. Those are two kinds of special cards that allow you to have some additional actions. For example, care cards allow you to use your dog twice in a day or more times in a day, because your dogs are trained and trust you if you care for them. So
it's important to care for your dogs, that's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Because I mean, you need to take care of your team, because when you work as a team, you can get results, and otherwise you don't. So yeah, for the base game, I would say it's really important to build a strong team. And then we have an expansion, because we wanted to keep this base game light and approachable, and so kids could play it. It could be a family game, and it would be interesting for non-gamers. But being gamers who prefer heavier games ourselves, we wanted to add another level, and then we decided to make an expansion. And this expansion has events, and those events affect the race. So, for example, you can take shortcuts, you can switch the landscape fields, and you can use your neighbor's Huskies and stuff like that. So,
really? Okay.
Yeah. Sometimes, if you're lucky and if you get the right cards. But yeah, so I would say for the base game, the emphasis is maybe on the first phase, and then with the expansion, the race becomes much more.
Yeah, and I was going to say, and I went back up to the top of the page here, is one thing I forgot to mention is that this is actually a 2 to 6 player game. And I think sometimes when you see a game like this, you may assume that you can only play it with 2 players. How does it play with 6 players? Does it play really well with the 6 players as well?
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, I'm biased, obviously, but
of course.
Yeah. So we were designing this for ourselves, and we are a couple, so we want to have a game that plays well with 2. But we also have a situation when we are 3 couples for a game night. So obviously it had to be able to handle 6 players. 8 would be better, but we stopped at 6, and then we scaled it a bit. With 5 and 6 players, the sled gets a bit smaller. You have 6 Huskies instead of 8, and the racetrack is a bit shorter. So the play time stays approximately the same. And then, so as individual, you get to do less actions, but there's more overtaking, and the race pace is maybe more interesting with more players, while the preparations is more interesting with less players. So I guess it balances out.
And the one thing I was just showing on the page here is that it seems like most of your backers are actually going with the expansion, right? The base game plus expansion.
Yeah, I think when we looked at other Kickstarter projects, we saw that if you have a pledge that is exclusive to Kickstarter, that one is actually the most popular. So we decided to offer a combo pack of base game and expansion where you get a free first player token. So that's a Kickstarter exclusive. So the backers of Kickstarter can actually get an item that won't be available in retail if we get to retail.
And will your expansion fit in the same box as the base game?
Yeah. Because we want to be our shelf friendly, so it will definitely fit. And backers are also asking if sleeved cards will fit too, and yes, they will.
Oh wow. Yeah. And this is something that not everybody always thinks of, and I mean, I'm guilty of that as well. I worked on a game where we had the box all kind of measured out, and someone asked a question, well, are you gonna have sleeves? Okay, like if and if you're not gonna offer sleeves and I'm putting my own sleeves on it, are they gonna fit in the box? Of course, we said yes, and then scrambled to go and redesign the tray to actually fit the sleeve cards. So kudos to the backer that pushed us on that one. But but it makes a difference, right? Because I think the one thing that I know personally I don't like is when I have a base copy of a game and then an expansion, and it's a separate box.
Yeah.
Right, because the chances are I'm probably going to play the expansion right out of the gate. Like, I want the full kind of version of the game because I like to play a little bit heavier than maybe what you'd buy off of the shelf. But then having to separate everything back out and put a separate box is not always a nice experience. So it's very cool that you guys thought of that ahead of time. What's some of the marketing that you've done going into this? I see on your page, GelUp is one of the services you've utilized. They're a social media amplification company, right? So they help with Facebook ads and things like that. Going into it, was that something that you had planned out of the gate, or what was your plans going into this campaign?
Well, we were very fortunate to be able to work with Nika, who is one of the most experienced people in Slovenia. When you mention Kickstarter, his name is going to come up. He's run several successful projects himself, and he mentors projects now. So we were really happy to get to be a part of his crowdfunding bootcamp. And then he talked us through the technical stuff of running the campaign. So about preparing the landing page, building a community, building a mailing list, using social media as channels. And then we talked about how to set up the Kickstarter page. And he also mentioned these agencies, for example, Yelp, who help with marketing. But we were kind of not sure whether we want to use it or not, because they usually only work with bigger projects that organically reach 50,000 euros. And we honestly didn't see ourselves as reaching that. But then we had a pretty great start, and we decided, well, maybe we do want to look at marketing, at least, try it. And because it's a bit daunting, because you need to have a bit of a budget for that. For example, you need to have 400 euros for the first day just to test. So if it doesn't work, you're putting 400 euros away, basically. And that's a lot of money for us. So when we had this great start, we said, okay, let's try it the first day. If it works, if it doesn't, and then we tried, and it actually worked pretty well. So we are happy that we did it.
And how big is your community that you've built? Like with this social media community, have you got like a great? Are you using Discord, or how are you kind of nurturing that?
We started with a mailing list. I think our mailing list was pretty tiny when we started the Kickstarter, because it was about 1,000 subscribers, which is not a lot. But it was pretty strong. The conversion rates usually for Kickstarter projects are set to be between 2 and 5%. And we got 12% on the first 2 days, I think. So we had a pretty strong mailing list. And I think it's because we never offered basically anything. We just said, if you're interested in this, subscribe and follow us. And we never offered discounts or stuff like that, because we simply didn't know if we would be able to offer a discount. So that, and then we also have a Facebook page and an Instagram account, but we're really not experts in that field. We're still learning. And then Board Game Geek, we were present there on the forums, but I'm not sure if that's really, that's a great community to be involved in, but it's not really our community or our followers. It's just the forums are really great. And
it's one of these things that it's constantly evolving, right? That's the challenge of Kickstarter. And, everyone is always trying to find out, what's the template that I need to follow. And the problem is it keeps shifting, right? Things are ever evolving. So what, works right now, 6 months, 8 months, a year from now may not be the thing that works as effectively, right? So it's constantly trying to stay on top of it. One of the best pieces of advice I had, and that you kind of mentioned, was I was working with a company that said, instead of advertising and sending people to your pre-sign-up page, your Notify Me page on Kickstarter, you are far better off to create a splash page, which shows what your game is about, and in there they can decide, do they want to opt in or not. And it's more expensive to get them to go there, and so your cost per acquisition of people to actually say yes, add me to your mailing list after seeing that splash page, it's 2 or 3 more clicks than just a single click. But then the return, right, when you actually launch your campaign, the conversion of those people is much, much higher, of getting them to actually back you. And it was pretty insightful when I saw that, because in the past I was always focused, the Notify Me count, that I got to get that pre-launch Notify Me count up. You can always direct people there from your mailing list. The challenge is if you direct people directly to that Notify Me page, and this is Chandler Copenhaver from CrowdOx and Backer Kid, I'll give him a shout out as well. Mm-hmm. This was his piece of advice. He's like, people go there and you have no influence over that contact once they go and they sign up on that page. But if you have them on an email list and send them from there over to Notify Me page, now you have the ability to retarget them and circle back and check in and kind of keep that community going. So, there's a lot of very smart people out there, and the more you can listen to these people out there, I think the better off some of these campaigns can be. And it sounds like you guys really surround yourself with a lot of very smart people before you did your campaign, which is probably the right strategy.
We try to, because this is I think this is one of my core principles. When I was little, my uncle told me, and he's one of the smartest people I know, he told me that experience is a great teacher, but learning everything from your own experience is expensive, so you have to listen to other people and learn from their experiences. And so when I take on a new project or want to learn about a new topic, I Google it myself first, and then if I really want to get involved in it, for me it works great if I can find someone who's done it before, who is successful in that field, and then ask. Because these people that are really successful are usually so open to answering your questions. You just need to ask, so
it is a very, very welcoming community, I would say. And the worst case, somebody says no, right? If you reach out to somebody to ask a question, worst case, they don't answer you, or they say I'm not going to answer you. Most cases, people are more than happy to pay it forward, right? Because many of them were in the same position where they're trying to learn, right? So
exactly.
I think that's important. So after this game, are you already thinking of the next game that's coming, or what do you guys have planned for when this campaign finishes in 72 hours or 48 hours, I guess?
So we will probably take a day off first.
Well deserved, yeah.
It's really been a crazy experience, and though we were prepared for the technical part of it, we weren't prepared for the sleepless nights and for the emotions and everything that comes with it. And it's been amazing. I'm not complaining. It's been a lot. So maybe a day off without a phone and without a computer first would be awesome. And then we will focus first on getting Hike into production, finalizing the PDF files and preparing everything to go into print. And then once that is well on the way, we will probably continue with the development of that first game that we have in the drawer. So
the one that's ready to come, the one that this is the trial for, I guess, right?
Something like that. And we do want to be in this field for the long run, so we're hoping maybe Hike would get into retail, hopefully, maybe, and then we would start working on the second game.
Oh, that's super cool. Well, for anybody that wants to check out this campaign, they can either type in Hike, right, and search under games on a Kickstarter, or I've actually got a link right in the show notes to make it easy for people to find. I want to wish you guys all the best on this campaign. Man, you must be just on cloud 9 right now, just seeing that ticker tape continue to spin. Even as we're talking here, that ticker tape just keeps spinning, right? Keeps going up. So these final 48 hours, I think you're going to end up in a very, very happy place. All the best with this campaign in this coming year.
Thank you, and thank you for having me here.
No worries. You take care. Cheers.
You too.
This has been an episode of the Board Game Binge podcast, hosted by James Staley, produced by James Staley and Mike Bruner, with original music by Nick Smith. If you would like to watch these interviews live, simply subscribe to our YouTube channel, Board Game Binge, and you'll get access to live interviews, giveaways, and interesting board game content from across the industry. I can't wait for you to join us. See you next time.